And my next speaker of the day is my son. He called me up 10 minutes before the program and said, Mom, I don't think I should be there. I said, Bete, there is something called commitment. Aja Ponja. So I'm really grateful, Arjun Mehta, that you're there. And
Yeah,
I
I'm here. I'm
really,
here.
yeah, and I really feel that people will learn something from you. You're young. And there are a lot of young people today who are creating businesses. So let me tell you how I know Arjun. He is my son, but how do I know him? So for me, he's a very talented young guy who underestimates himself and is constantly in a question mark whether life has given him completeness or not. He's also struggling sometimes and searching for himself. His biggest struggle probably is should he be ever in a commitment of any kind or not? So, today was the first step to that commitment, where if you can commit and keep what you said you will do, that's enough. That's enough. Don't commit beyond you can give. So I really am grateful because when he was born, I didn't think we would pass the first few years of our life because I didn't think he would exist. Because we went through enough medical tragedies where I thought I was going to lose him. 27 years later, I present to you my son, who is tall in every whichever way, and I'm proud to have this beautiful soul in my life who's taught me beyond any master or teacher could have taught me. So over to Arjun Mehta.
Thank you for that introduction, Mom. That's a little overwhelming. Um, but yeah, you're right. I'm definitely here. I was definitely going to chicken out from this conversation because I haven't really prepared. Um, but yeah, tell me how should we essentially sort of start so I can give my 2 cents on the topic at hand.
Okay, so I want you to take everybody through your childhood and tell them
Hmm.
what kind of complexes that you had in your childhood. I really appreciate it.
Um, I think I mean, if I have to really reflect back to it, it was, I would say, quite a different childhood to the extent that maybe I didn't see the movies that other kids saw. I didn't maybe read the books that other kids were reading. I was definitely not as tall as all the other kids as well, which meant that I was quick to be alienated. But in general, I think it's been very phase divided in terms of being in different schools and interacting with different types of people, from going to being extraordinarily religious and almost God-fearing, to reaching a place today where I'm perhaps more logical and rational. Not that either or is better than the other, but I'm just saying it's a range of not even emotions. It's just a range of your being to a certain extent, where your environment, I think, conditions you um, to be a certain way, essentially, right? So it was an interesting childhood to the extent that it was very offbeat, which kind of definitely today, to my benefit, helps me stand apart from the crowd, which obviously helps people take notice of me to a certain extent, whether it's how I think or how I present myself or how I speak or my cultural capital that I've been predisposed to, and so on. So it's been a range. No complaints, definitely, especially in hindsight. But let's just say it was a childhood that confirms, or it was a childhood that maybe didn't give me the confidence at that time that I would be where I am today, which is obviously in a far better place. I feel like I've just like a good bottle of wine aged really well, if I may say so.
Okay, so your childhood you said was pretty unconventional, and you also have uh, a lot of culture capital. So, what do you mean by that?
Sorry, could you say that again, Mom? I didn't catch that.
You said that your childhood was pretty unconventional, and you have a lot of cultural capital. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so I think it was different in the sense that most of my friends or most of the people I engage with today have generally lived in maybe one or two cities in their entire lifespan, right? for them, a city is their identity to a very large extent. The way my sister and I were brought up, obviously, we had lived, by the time I was 22, I had lived in 7 cities, right, which is an average of 2.5, 3 years per city. Which basically means that we had seen the best and the worst of 5 different metropolitan cities within India. We'd seen the best and worst of the Czech Republic, and I had the opportunity to live in Canada as well, whereas my sister at the same time had the opportunity to live in the US and in Canada, and the UK in London. Um, so for us, it became more of a less of a, oh, I'm a globetrotter, look, I've been traveling to all these places, and more of a situation of we've just lived in these places, and it's become very normal to us. So for example, if a friend of mine tomorrow says, oh my god, I need to move to Canada, or oh my god, I have to move to London, or whatever it might be, for various purposes, to them it's very daunting. For my sister and I, it's probably just something we would probably do without batting an eye, because I think it would take us maybe 2 to 3 weeks to really settle in and be part of that new culture. Whether we want to or not is irrelevant. It's just, I think, that sort of level of cultural capital where you understand um, a population's nuances, and you understand a population's cultural habits, the do's and don'ts. I think that's what my sister and I have definitely been equipped with, given our slightly strange and like I said, range based younger times, essentially, when we were kids.
What were the biggest challenges that you had? I remember you got bullied in school, and there was a lot going on in your space. What are the other
Yes.
challenges
So
that you faced, and how did they help you? How were they like opportunities?
I think I think the biggest challenge obviously I faced was just my height at that time, right? I'm what 5'5", which is generally, or 5'4" rather, which is generally considered short for Indian men as well. But I think it was just easy pickings, right? You go after the smallest person because they seem the least threatening to you. And it could be based on your insecurities. But I think being bullied, I think, again, like going to school abroad or being to a boarding school, in a similar way, being bullied is something I feel most of us have been through. Maybe somewhere we should all go through it as well to a certain extent, because it just made me, I guess, love myself a lot more in terms of just accepting the fact that I was short. Like, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it at this point, right? You can stretch from balconies and do whatever you want to. It's not going to make any difference, right? So to me, it just came to a place where I decided that my height would not dictate my stature, but my profession and my the way I conduct myself would dictate how tall I was, essentially, right? So it didn't really matter. Eventually, at that time, yes, I got bullied. I didn't see an opportunity out of it, but at this point, anybody can say anything to me, and it doesn't really bother me per se. I mean, I wouldn't really bat an eye, because I've really heard everything, right? I mean, heard everything, been pushed down staircases, been had my head banged against railings, all because I was short. Does it matter today? Absolutely not, because I don't think, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I don't think a person twice my height is as capable as I am, right? And I say that only because I've tried to chart out a niche for myself in terms of what I do, so that I can compensate for being a short guy with a rather tall stature. That's probably my learning from that situation.
Okay. What education did you take to become this tall?
Okay, this one's a good one, because I actually, in terms of my current profession, I've actually never ever been to school for it specifically, right? When I went to my undergrad school in Canada, I was doing a double major in political science and history, and I was all set to become a lawyer, essentially. Which would have been a great life to a certain extent, no doubt. Not that it isn't now, it's just been a very sort of different path to getting there. But currently, I mean, I run a company of like 6 individuals where we handle up to 35 to 40 clients in 3 different countries. And it's all a skill set that I've picked up on the job, essentially. I've never learned it. I just learned, I never formally learned it. I never sat in a classroom and learned it. I just learned it while I was working, right? Um, which is why I'm a very firm believer now in self-learning, essentially. I think that if you truly need to pick up a skill, pick up a skill, I don't think you actually need to go to school for it formally. I don't think you actually need to go to university for it formally by spending tons and tons of money. I think you can actually just open your laptop or just find an expert and have them teach it to you, or just get a job which is completely out of your comfort zone. At that point, you'll have no choice but to. I think it was sink or swim. I swam fairly decently, and it was obviously an opportunity created out of people who needed what I was able to bring to them as well to a certain extent, right? So for example, so the previous jobs I was doing at that time really dictated that I had to figure it out. So yeah, that's, I think, in terms of education, it became a situation of I studied something but never applied it. Although whatever I studied definitely does seep into my current job profile, because I mean I can write in my sleep. It's not rocket science. There are situations where uh, again, like I said, that cultural capital basically allows you to be slightly differentiated from, let's say, even if I have a certain direct competitor.
So, you learnt on the job, you came back to India from Canada and picked up a job. Can
Right.
you talk a little bit about that job and what did you really do there? This is so
So,
that young people like you
hmm
can probably understand that everything is possible.
when I came back from Canada again, I really didn't have any specific thing in mind. I was like, maybe I'll do something with law. I'll apply to law schools and see where that goes. But I really come back with a sense of like, it's not even like taking a break. I just come back because I had a sense of belonging in India as opposed to in Canada. But I think I was through a friend, I was called to do a like a photography assignment for a young company back in the day called snackable.com, which today has become a huge business that sells snacks online. Um, at that time, I was just a young photographer there. I was doing photography for them for 1 week. I think the third day of being there, I realized that these guys are up to something really phenomenal. I love being there more than just doing the photography. I just love seeing what they were doing because it looked so crazy to me to sell snacks online, right? What I decided at that point, I told them, hey guys, just take me onto your team and I will do absolutely anything you want me to do. That was my clear direction to them. I said, you want me to package, I'll do that. You want me to deliver, I'll do that. I said, I'll do anything. I just have to go for a quick travel. I was just traveling with my father for a bit. Once I'm done with that, I'll come back and take up the job. Once I came back, I was sat down in the room with the founder, and the founder looked at me and said, Arjun, we're making you the head of marketing at Snackable. And at that time, obviously, we were a team of 4 people, so I wasn't really heading any team per se, but I was, yes, fully responsible for taking care of Snackable being online, right? That's why I guess online becomes very relevant, especially with COVID nowadays. But this was 5 years ago when three young kids just decided, I was like 22 at that time. We just decided that let's just take this business online and see what happens essentially. And I was in charge of the website and running ads and taking care of analytics and data and so on and so forth. At that time, obviously, I had no clue what I was doing. And so at that time, we used to get 4 orders a day. That's all we used to do at that point, right? 4 orders. We used to get really happy when it used to be 10 orders, average 4 orders a day, right? I used to get a marketing budget of 15,000 rupees. We used to convert it into 1.5 lakhs at the end of the month. Slowly, as we started sort of picking up on the business and we started realizing that we're really onto something, we started getting an idea of how to learn the system ourselves. Today, Snackable is in a place where we do 400 orders in a day, right? After 5 years of like testing and turning and going through multiple websites. And it's become one of those companies that you can generally, I would say 5 out of 10 people would currently know about the existence of that brand, right? And it was at that time we were a team of 5 people, 3 of us in terms of the co-founding team with 2 people in operations. Um, Today, I think we have a packaging team of up to 30 people, along with a core team of at least another 5 to 10 people who take care of daily operations. And we even launched a sub brand called Dipsters at that point, which was a 20 rupee chip and dip pack situation. But Snackable just blew up. It absolutely blew up, where literally over 5 years, even though I know today we could have done that in less than a year. But at that time, because the learning curve was so large, we basically went from a situation of doing 4 orders a day to 400 orders a day. And more than 4 to 400, it's the learning that comes in between those 5 years of like constantly just being obsessed with trying to sell one packet of makhana to a customer sitting in some part of, Gujarat or some part of Tamil Nadu, who you will never land up meeting. But every single order gives you an absolute eternal joy, because you know that's the business that you built essentially over years.
So, how did that help you to create what you have created now? So, can you tell people what really you have created right now, and
Right.
and how you're helping
Hmm.
others?
So once I finished my 3 year stint at Snackable, I decided I had enough of selling snacks and that I could sell anything else under the sun at this point. And that was an open challenge to myself. My I think I quit Snackable on March 16th, 2016 or 2018. Sorry, 2017. And I think March 19th, I started a new business essentially, because I'd started already pitching to new clients while I was still at Snackable, because I was ready for my exit essentially. And essentially, whatever I was doing for Snackable, I just standardized it and I created a product out of it. Obviously, it's still a service, but I created a standardized product out of it. And I started pitching to young businesses saying that you need me to make sure that you don't make the mistakes that I made with Snackable earlier. That was my pitch, right? I said that, I mean, I know exactly what I'm doing and I know exactly what your business needs. My very first client, this is 2.5 years ago, was a company called the Black Box Co. And they essentially used to do vegan leather personalized products, right? And I used to spend 2 days in their office just trying to work their business and make sure that everything would work out. And just to give you a quick idea, when I joined them, they used to do 4 lakhs of revenue per month as their best month, right? Over a year and a half of toiling with their business and trying to rework it, we were able to take them up to an average of 22 lakhs per month, as opposed to 4 lakhs per month, right? That basically means that at the last financial year, which is this year in March, they closed their entire online business at 2.2 crores in revenue, right? All that had come directly through us and our team, basically, because of the know-how of how to run the internals of an online business, right? Not a retail business, a solely online business. From there, essentially, I started picking up more and more businesses through references, through cold pitching, to the extent that where I used to be a sole individual running a team of just me at that point, because I would to run from one part of Bombay to the other to help businesses essentially. Um, Today we are, like I said, a team of 5. We have up to 35 clients. We provide up to 4 or 5 services. And we currently even, like I said, function in multiple cities trying to help these businesses scale, especially during COVID, right? So to give you an idea, we do everything from building clients' websites to selling the products through the websites, to doing a client's unit economics, to telling them what type of packaging they should have, to getting them the right shipping agency, to telling them how to, treat their customers in terms of customer relation issues, to the extent that we've been able to sell everything from marble online to a sex toy. That's literally the range of what we sell online today, right? So it's quite a vast mix of things. Just today, I had a meeting with a cafe in Bandra called the Village Shop, which has seen a 2/3 drop in sales because of COVID, right? And what we've decided is that because certain businesses are in such dire need, we've decided to obviously put our rates down slightly and say, okay, fine, we'll help you. Once you start growing, we ourselves will start growing as well, because we'll cut a certain percentage deal with you. But the idea for them specifically is to take that restaurant, that shop online, and see whether I can reach more people than just the immediate geographic area, right? So that's what our core business currently lies in. And we're also, like I said, in a situation where we are tomorrow looking at creating our own tech products. We're in the process of creating a school of digital marketing where we want to actually teach young adults how to be digital marketers, but like I said, at a very nuanced level where they can actually learn how to read data, right? We're even in the process of actually choosing to tomorrow invest in young companies who might not have capital to start initially. Right? There are a lot of people with a lot of great ideas, but not necessarily capital. Where tomorrow, if we come in with capital, we'll be able to actually help them take the idea into fruition, not just with the expertise, but also with monetary backing. Right. So we even have a very clear, like I said, we've come here in the last 2.5 years. We have a very clear plan for the next 2.5 years, for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years. We know who our competitors are. We know what we're going to be up against. For example, this is a slightly unheard of piece of technology, but artificial intelligence is something that's going to be a very clear threat to a physical ad running team, right? Because tomorrow machines will be able to do everything you do. So that means I'll be out of a job tomorrow, essentially. So for me, it comes down to how can I build my own artificial intelligence system so that I can own that rather than saying, oh, look, I'm out of a job. I just have to go and build that system, right? Essentially. So we're always, even though we're 2.5 years into the business, we're always looking at different ways to pivot the business. That's the main thing, to pivot the business to look different almost every year, because every year there's going to be a new opportunity, there's going to be a new roadblock, there's going to be a new competitor. It really comes down to how you can mold yourself into that current context, even if it's, like I said, COVID, for example.
Right. So tell me, Arjun, and this is probably one of the last questions for you. What
Hmm, hmm.
inspires you to keep moving? Because I've seen you, there are a few days when you're really, really down, and then there are a few days that you're really, really up.
Hmm.
What really keeps you going, and what really keeps you inspired to do what you're doing?
Um, I think to a large extent, it's a sense of purpose that you are. I truly believe that my purpose of being is more than just dealing with the day-to-day mundanities of, oh, have you had lunch, oh, have you slept, and all that kind of stuff. I truly think that being at the helm of a business and actually being not a breadwinner, but actually knowing that there are people who you rely on to start with, because I do rely on my employees. I value them to the core because I know that I'm nothing essentially without them. I might be my ideas, but I'm not a real business without my actual team, right? It's empowering to know that I rely on them. Yes, I know it's the other way, but it's empowering to know that I rely on them and that they rely on me to create a mutually reinforcing system of absolute growth, right? Where every day you come into work knowing that tomorrow you will be in a better position than you are today, essentially, right? What the larger goal of doing this is, you're helping very young businesses reach true potential. That's the first thing that definitely keeps me going, is my clients' appreciation to me for having done a good job, right? Obviously, with every good job done, they want a better job done tomorrow, but that's obviously something we're happy to keep looking at, as long as the client is willing to take on further responsibilities. But I think the biggest goal that really comes back is that I feel that I've had a very fortunate upbringing. I've had a very fortunate and comfortable life that I can even choose to embark upon something like this, right? There could be a lot of people who don't have even the basic resources to be able to start a business to a certain extent, right? So our biggest goal, obviously, eventually, would be to see how we can give back to society in the way that our parents or we were able to get from society to a certain extent, right? If that means setting up actual tangible NGOs, whether it be for people in need or whether it be for animals in need. I think a big part of this business also does come down to, apart from our physical comforts, what can we do as a brand to help not only other businesses but also other people who might not just have businesses. It just could be a social responsibility angle where we're truly helping others, whether we're teaching them, whether we're just providing them with financial stability, whatever it might be, right? So I think it's three things essentially. It definitely run a business, which I honestly never thought I could do in my entire life, because I was always told that I was too small to do things in terms of my body size and stuff like that. And that's impressionable. It sticks with you, right? So I think, I know this sounds a little crazy, but every day of my life is just a fuck you to everybody who thought that I couldn't do it, right? Which probably brings me to a very interesting notion that my company name actually stands. It's TYS is the actual abbreviation, but it stands for Told You So. right? It stands for told you so, that I can, that I am correct, that I know what I'm doing, that whatever your inhibitions were against me or my company or my abilities are absolutely not true, because I know what I do and I know I do it the best. More than that, it's not even about doing it the best. I suppose it's also coming from, it's not coming from a place of being cocky. If I'm wrong, I will absolutely tell myself that I told you so. I let my clients use my company against me as well, to a certain extent, right? But at the end of the day, it just really comes down to being told your entire life by your peers and by your classmates that you're up to nothing, right? You won't be able to do anything, to today probably being in a position where um, you're really hurtling towards this great idea that you have, which you've essentially created yourself. I think that's just hugely empowering, to be able to wake up to knowing that you've created a big business for yourself, which creates business for others, because ultimately your business helps other businesses flourish. I think it's hugely empowering to wake up to that every day, I think.
Thank you, Arjun. Anything else that you would like to say, or anything that you've specifically learned, maybe from grandfather, grandmom, or other people? You would like to acknowledge any ancestors or anybody else before we pick up questions from the audience for both my speakers?
Yes, I think for sure. Uh, I think every person who sort of like lands up in your life, whether it be a parent, a lover, a friend, all definitely will end up teaching you something good or bad, which will always apply to whatever your context might be. It might apply today, it might apply 20 years from tomorrow, from today, but trust me, there is always some sort of learning that will come from people who surround you. I think that if you really want to truly flourish in what you choose to do, you need to surround yourself with the right type of people, right? When I say right type of people, I mean people who are just as motivated as you, or people who motivate you, right? You want to be able to have a support system. Trust me, I can't do it without a support system, and that comes from my parents. It comes from my grandmother very specifically, because we currently function out of her house. Everything from that air conditioner to the absolute room is a support system that my grandmother brings to the cups of tea she makes for the entire team. We are absolutely starting off from scratch, right? This is a fully funded company by myself, which means that the environment I've created, or the environment that I've been predisposed to, is amazing. I've got a fantastic support system around me to keep telling me and reinforcing that what I'm doing is correct, where I might falter, and if what I'm doing is wrong, right? This does not only apply in my business, it applies throughout my entire life, essentially. And I think that support system is very important, but more than that, I think just being compassionate towards another person's problems, even if it's as small as, oh, I'm having a headache, or oh, I'm on my periods. These are things that you need to consider, even though they might sound like very small things. For example, at TYS, at our company, if a person needs a vacation or needs a leave on the level of having a mental health issue, or menstruating, they're allowed to take a leave, right? And these are all things that you need to keep building into your business as a compassionate business as well. Compassion does not mean that you will not be profitable tomorrow, right? That's not how that works. As a boss, you don't have to be an asshole to your employees to make sure you get the best out of them, right? Studies actually show that increasing their salaries and actually reducing work days actually creates higher levels of productivity. Ultimately, that's all you want at the end. You want a my motto for running my business is that, teach your employees well enough that they tomorrow can start their own business, but treat them well enough that they'll never leave. That's essentially what we run TYS with, right? So I think, like I said, just to sort of summarize that, it's always going to be a mix of surrounding yourself with the right type of people, and I think you should even be brutal in making sure you remove people from that support system if they're not supporting you any longer, and being compassionate towards people who are helping you live your dream by leaving theirs aside, um, or being even compassionate to them at the level of just being a human being. And I think those two things are very important.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that you kept your commitment. Um, and I really
Go
value
find
your
a
presence in
girlfriend
my
now
life.
tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to just take you to a song which my friend